And welcome to episode 3 of Starfleet Boy. Today we are going to have a casual and informal discussion about episode 3, or the fourth actual episode, Code of Honor. And I'm joined once again by my esteemed colleague, Goldu Scott.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Excellent. Nice to see you again. How's everything on Bajor?
Everything is good over here on Terok Nor, situation normal. How are you?
Everything's great here at Starfleet Command. Oh, look at that. I didn't clean the apartment before the broadcast now.
Yeah, messy day over there.
Who knows how messy how messy I am. There's like a blanket back there, and oh boy.
What is going on?
I was watching Star Trek till too late. That's
Yeah.
what's
Well, I imagine watching this episode, Code of Honor, was, you were not inspired to clean up. Your mind was blown. You were in a little bit of shock over what you'd just seen. If you're anything like me.
Yeah, well, okay, so as we've talked about this before, a lot of these episodes I haven't seen since probably my teenage years or early 20s, depending on when they were rebroadcast on in reruns. So yeah, Code of Honor was very interesting indeed. Let me just set it up a little bit. The the Enterprise is on its way to a planet called Ligonia, right? Is it because they're Ligonian?
Ligon. I think it's Ligon 2.
Ligon 2. Thanks for knowing that. I totally should have written that. Oh, there goes my happy computer. It's 1 o'clock.
What time is it at Starfleet HQ?
1 p.m. in the afternoon.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a little better. Last time I think it was 3 p.m. Anyways,
yeah.
So they're headed to this planet because there's this outbreak, a disease, a virus that's causing massive chaos in another part of the Federation. And the Ligonians, the people of this planet, are not members of the United Federation of Planets, but they do happen to have this vaccine. And the counselor, the whole situation is very tricky diplomatically because they are considered to be primitive by our standards, both culturally and somewhat technologically too. They're not like people that are like not able to have like modern, I guess they have computers and stuff, even though it doesn't look like it. But anyways, this culture is kind of held on to this sort of barbaric code of honor. They're very honor driven culture, according to Captain Picard, which kind of is insulting to the Klingons, in my opinion, but we'll get into all the insults that arise from this episode later. But
it's also a good French insult that Picard
there's a lot of, this episode is just rife with insults to cultures and people, so that's an interesting conversation to delve into. But just going back to the plot, so they have to negotiate with these guys, and then it's very tricky because they're very proud people, and they're not just going to give this vaccine up if they think that they're being dissed. It's pretty simple. Don't diss us, you get the vaccine, right? So that's the whole point of this.
Very strict code of honor.
What's that?
We have a very strict code of honor.
Yeah. What are some codes of honor?
Code of honor.
Imagining for a moment that we are in the future, Goldu Scott, which easy to imagine because we.
Yes. Okay, I'm imagining.
What would be some things that we look back on to today, to our time, and think, oh, that's so barbaric?
This episode?
No, just our.
No, I'm saying that's something we would probably look on and say, wow, look at that episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. That's pretty barbaric. But I'm sure there's lots of things. There's a long list of things that are still going on in society that are not very exciting. But you remember a lot more of this episode than I do. I mean, I only watched it about 12 hours ago. But what I remember most is just sort of a vague sense of racism, a really horrible fight at the end with Tasha Yar, and it's just general like original series sets and music going on. It was just a very strange episode, and I don't know what your method is for how we do this. I watch the episode basically cold. I don't read anything about it beforehand. I just try to, yeah, just go in with my hazy, unreliable memories, and then read about it afterwards. So it wasn't until afterwards that I found out, based on my heavy research that I do, that this is widely considered one of the worst episodes of any Star Trek series ever.
Right.
And it is accused of racism by many people. And there's lots and lots of quotes. The director was fired in the middle of making it because of the decision to cast that entire race of aliens as African Americans. Just a lot of controversy.
It was poorly received at the time. I remember actually even thinking, oh, wow, like even as a kid, I was like, oh, I don't know about this episode. But focusing on a few things, details that were pretty interesting story-wise. So Goldie Scott did mention that the Ligonians are all cast as African Americans, which, while not oh my goodness, why doesn't this?
Who's messaging you?
It's just I don't know how to turn it off.
Is it one of our? Is it an audience?
Ship, go into do not disturb mode. Yes, Captain. Oh, you guys just saw me doing that. You're supposed to do it next time. You do the ship's voice next. So they cast the entire cast. The whole planet seems to be an African American looking species. Now let's make something really clear. Within the context of Star Trek, these are not African Americans. They just are played by African American actors. In the context of the show, these are aliens. They look humanoid, and the way that the contention of the show is that the way the species evolved, they happen to look like humanoids who are black or of African origin.
They were originally written in the script as reptilian.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Yeah. Much like my own race of Cardassians.
That would have been amazing. I do prefer my science fiction to go way out there if you're going to go out there, but obviously budgets and things like that.
And that is actually the nobody really seems to know for sure why the director was let go, but the most popular theory out there seems to be that it was because he chose to cast them, all as Africans, and turned it into an episode that hinged towards racism as opposed to just keeping it sort of a reptilian or some kind of generic type of alien.
Right. I mean, the decision was definitely controversial at the time, and even watching it now, it's like, one wonders, could that really happen? Could a planet really, a whole planet evolve that way? The answer is maybe. It's science fiction, whatever. So some of the things that I do think that were positive, though, is that the performers that were hired to play the parts of the Ligonians, I thought were phenomenal. I mean, I can only imagine what went through their heads. Like, these are probably like actors that are like, so excited to get a part on Star Trek, like the big TV show. It's going to be on everywhere, and so, I think it's very awesome considering the time that this was filmed in, that these actors gave it their all, because the performances are really authentic and good. And especially I do love Lutan. He's just so, you love to hate him. He's just a great,
cool.
Yeah, great character. And I think the other the second, so let's talk about Ligonian culture a little bit before we dive into that. But the second, I think his name was Hogan, right?
I don't know.
It was Hogan, I'm pretty sure. And then Urina was the name of the wife. So going into that a little deeper, so what Starfleet finds, so there's this really cool turbo lift briefing. So the Enterprise arrives at this planet, and Counselor Troy and Commander Riker are escorting the captain to the cargo bay, oddly enough. Not sure why they didn't receive these guests in the main transporter room. Do you remember? Was there a...
I had that question as well.
Yeah. Anyways, cool set, cargo set, the cargo bay set.
Yeah, there was some issue with them wanting to use their own transporters for some reason.
Oh, that's right. And they probably thought a safe place to put them would be the cargo bay.
I don't know. It's very weird, but I had that question, and then I was wondering, I wasn't sure if we had even seen the transporter bay yet in the series, and so I was wondering if that was the original transporter bay, but then later in the episode, they show us the normal
one. Yeah, it's true. So anyways, they go to the cargo bay, and I did like the scene in the turbolift where they're briefing Captain Picard. I thought that was great because it shows a little bit of like ship's functions. Like, Captain Picard's like he later becomes known as like probably the most diplomatic captain of all the Starfleet captains featured on Star Trek. And diplomacy is one of his passions, if you will. So this was a nice little introduction to that aspect of Captain Picard and to see how he deals with negotiations and things like that. So anyways, we meet Lutan and Hagon, and several of their security. And so pretty interesting looking characters. The costumes were, I thought, too shiny, like too much bright shiny stuff.
They
but
were very original series costumes.
Yeah, very original series, echoing Persian culture. So I thought that was interesting and neat. Like they were wearing turbans and capes, and they look like princes of Persia, basically. Yeah,
it reminded me of Aladdin. Was Aladdin out yet?
Aladdin was probably the style cue for the costume director. But again, in proper Next Generation fashion, there's a little bit of sexiness there. The men expose part of their chests, or you definitely get to see some musculature. Anyways, he comes to the ship with the security detail, and then there's this really formal interchange, and immediately from the start, Lutan, I guess you could call him the leader of this society.
I wasn't clear on that. He's the leader of the whole planet? Is that what we're to believe?
Yeah, I think it's safe to assume that, because the Enterprise, it's the flagship of the Federation. It kind of deals, it's like you're not going to send Captain Picard to deal with a small, mayor or governor. Okay.
Because I have a question. Can we just skip to the end here?
Yeah, I mean, we can stick around.
Because in the end, so his wife dies in the fight with Tasha, and then she's brought back to life.
You gotta tell see, this is part of the brilliant part of the episode, which is the little trick that they do. So we do have to talk about that in detail.
Okay. Well, but my main question with regard to how the society works is the fact that, so the wife dies, she's brought back to life, and then she says, well, because I died, our vows said till death do us part, and so I'm allowed to divorce you. And so she takes the necklace away from him and gives it to the other guy.
Anyone looking to get a divorce, anyone who's looking to get a divorce from their partner, this is a great way to do it. It works. It would work in today's league. We need a legal advisor to give us a certain answer here. We might call our attorney later, but
we should get an attorney on to find out.
Next episode we'll have a follow-up, because we actually do know a couple of attorneys between us that can consult on this question.
Yeah, we'll find out the legal ramifications on your marriage through death and resurrection, if that ever.
Death and resurrection. Yes. Anyways, sorry, you were
so it's implied though that when she takes the necklace and she gives it to Hagon, right? That's his name?
Yes.
Hagon, she now says, you now have all my lands, you're now the ruler. It seems like the wife is actually the one who has the power ultimately, and she's able to take it away from this guy and give it to Hagon at the end of the episode. Did I misread that, or was that your take as well?
So what I think the show was trying to prove, and I don't know if it does it successfully because it took me like probably a lot of it. It's funny enough, I thought about this, Galdu Scott, but it took me a few times watching it over the course of my life to kind of realize this, and also you posing this question. But I think what they're trying to convey, and I'm not sure they're successful at it, is that the way that this society works is that women are kind of, they're not considered to be leaders, but they're somehow given property and can only be exclusively property owners. So what I imagine is that, like, you know how we have this sort of like in the in the in the 50s, and maybe, you know, is where you can kind of see it recently, but like certainly before that, women managed households. That was like considered their jobs, right? So I could see that a society that kind of takes that to an extreme would then eventually say, well, you know, the place of a woman is to manage a household and tend to the land and tend to the household, and the place of a man. And so therefore in this society, somehow women came into ownership of that. You know, they were like, okay, well, we'll do that, but then we're like the owners of the planet, of the land. Men are not allowed to have property or title, and we're down. We're gonna manage this business. we're gonna raise those kids. We're gonna raise that society. So the society seems to work for them because she certainly is more powerful than her male counterpart, much like the monarchy in England. It is a figurehead monarchy, but at the same time, the Queen of England can, if she chooses to, dissolve the government and start it over. If she's like, this government sucks, I'm going to dissolve this government. I mean, I think I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the kind of thing that otherwise the Queen, you know, many argue that the monarchy is kind of not necessary.
Yeah, I argue that.
I don't. I love them. Yeah.
You want to have? Should we have an argument right now about monarchies?
No, that's fine.
I'm not really a fan of the Queen. I know there's a picture of the Queen right here behind me, but it's really more a picture of Patrick Stewart.
Right.
I'm not a fan of the Queen, though. I hope she watches this shit. I just screwed any chance we ever might have had of interviewing the Queen on our show now, didn't I?
No, because I'm known to be very loyal to Her Majesty the Queen of England.
Oh, okay. So you're known in the circles as being a
I'm well known for this this thing.
Okay.
And in fact, I have dreams where I talk to her. I've had like pretty regular.
Really?
Yeah, very interesting. I love the monarchy. I'm a monarchist, so we're opposites in that way. And we could have this argument, but it's definitely not appropriate for this show.
We'll do that on our monarchy discussion.
On our monarchy channel. The monarchy channel. Star Trek nerds talk about monarchy, debate the monarchy. Well, anyway, so I imagine that's how that power hierarchy came to be, and it's interesting. I mean, I kind of liked it. I did like that. I thought it was empowering in a way to women, but not completely empowering. We do see a later episode of another matriarchal society. I don't think this is a matriarchal society so much as a society. This is the part of it that I guess the crew of the Enterprise sees as barbaric. It's just like, it's bizarre to them that, like, you know, these puppet posturing peacock men don't actually rule the planet, and more sensible women stay quiet while they're like arguing. Like Lutan basically, you know, he's just so pompous and so egotistical, and like basically creates the most awful situation for everyone. And the whole time, his wife Urena, she's just chilling. She's like not concerned.
Well, Urena is super into him. Remember the scene when she goes into the room and she's yelling at Yar and she's like, "Of course you love him. Why wouldn't you? He's the most amazing man ever. Look at him." she thinks she's got this great prize in Lutan, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure I disagree with her.
Well, she comes to her senses at the end and sees that the more generous tempered ruler of the society is in fact Hagon. Again, we'll talk more about
Well,
that.
we don't know. I mean, what have we really seen Hagon do? He's pretty quiet. We haven't seen him in rulership, whatever you want to call it, in the seat of power. I'd like to revisit this planet in a couple years and see the job that Hagen has done, and then decide, whether he's a more fit ruler than Lutan. As of right now, I'm on Team Lutan. And so the end of the episode left me a little bit sad and a little bit upset that Lutan has power taken away.
I'm definitely on Team
Lutan.
I'm definitely on Team Hagon because to me, Lutan is the Donald Trump of his planet, and
I could not disagree with you more.
He's definitely the Donald Trump of his planet. He's outrageous, inconsiderate. I mean, okay, so let's just go into what happened. So, diplomatic trip, right? These guys come onto the ship, and Captain Picard extends full diplomatic courtesy to them. I mean, it's just wonderfully done. He's very polite. The whole crew comes out to, the senior officers come out to meet them. The dialogue's really well kind of written in terms of diplomatic language and things like that.
Yeah, but didn't you feel like Riker was kind of being a dick right off the bat?
Well, so here's what happened. So almost immediately, Lutan takes an interest in security officer chief Tasha Yar. No surprise there. She's a very, very strong character, and she's a woman, so it's unusual for him to see a woman take such liberties and be so independent and strong, and it's immediately a turn on for him.
And for me.
Huh?
And for me.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people find Tasha Yar to be very attractive. So this kind of perturbs Commander Riker, and he's a little bit, defensive and protective as he should be. I thought Captain Picard played it really cool. He's like trying to keep tensions low and invites.
Well, really, Troy saved the day.
Yeah.
Counselor Troy came through, and she says, "Captain, don't apologize." And and it was like you were saying earlier, how Picard is known as such a diplomat. It was weird to see him here in these early days, kind of not having all the information before he went into this meeting. And I feel like in future seasons he wouldn't need Troy to tell him that, but she definitely played a big role, not just there, but in this whole episode. She was important in a lot of scenes.
Well, there's an interesting point you raise about not being prepared, and I think that's very apparent in this episode. They seem to, like, this outbreak occurred, and then all of a sudden they realized, oh, we have to go and talk to these people on this planet. I think Captain Picard thought, well, I have enough training and experience, I can probably wing this. And then later you find they actually have to do extensive research once the thing happens that puts everyone into a tizzy. And that thing is to just get to that. So Lutan tours the ship. He's impressed. He's very happy. He even lets his guard down in one scene where he's like, you know what? You guys are so friendly and awesome. Security, you can chill out. I'm gonna hang here with these guys and just it looks like it's all going well. The security members leave the ready room and the conference room, and they start talking, and then Lutan insists on seeing the holodecks. He's heard about the holodeck, and I think we spoke about this before, how holodecks are pretty new at the level that they're at. So yeah,
this was a big deal. The holodeck. I remember this from being a kid. This is the one part of this episode that I kind of remember, from my original viewing, was that it was really cool to. Anytime we got to see the holodeck in those early episodes, it was a big deal.
Real big deal, yeah. And it was like, to this day, I think it's driving a lot of people to try and like, that's basically what the whole virtual reality concept is. And you know, I think people are trying to create their, we want holodecks. Like, this is something humanity's like really into. Will it happen in
And
our lifetime?
you also too see another reason why Tasha Yar was my personal favorite character in the early season was she really was like the action hero. Like I know everybody talks about Riker was brought in because the captain was older and he was going to be like the Kirk type action hero, but it seems to me like Tasha was really the action star. She's the one that gets all the cool fights in the early episodes, and especially in this one, we see her in her Karate Kid outfit, and then at the end, she's wearing the bandana.
Yeah, totally. And that's it. So this is what happens. Lutan insists that on seeing the holodecks, and then Picard assigns Riker to go show him, and Lutan cleverly says, "I'd like Tasha or Commander Yar to show me the holodeck." And so there's this like moment of tension.
Very clever that Utan.
That Lutan. Can we just call him Donald Trump? Uh,
We'll call him Donald Trump, Lagonian Trump.
Lagonian Trump. Or like, anyways, so they're kind of bickering about it a little bit, Riker and Lutan. And so then Tasha kind of cuts the tension and says, no, it's cool. I'll do it. She's like, I want to show him the holodeck.
Yeah, well, she's into Lutan.
What's that?
Tasha is into Lutan.
Yeah, apparently Tasha. So I mean, not surprising, right? He just like exudes like man, even in that like really kind of unflattering and somewhat shiny costume. he's able to convey a lot of masculinity. The actor did a great job again.
He is the James T. Kirk of his planet.
He's definitely, yeah, James T. Kirk gone wild. This is what would have happened to Captain Kirk if he was unchecked.
I think if Captain Kirk was ever left in one place for too long, he would turn into Lutan. The fact that he's just moving around, he's never in one place, he can't establish relationships or, build a little cult around him. That's the only reason he doesn't become like that.
Wow, good, interesting theory. Well, I wonder if there's a Star Trek spin-off novelization or offshoot that kind of explores that theme. That's a good one. I like that. Captain Kirk gone wild. that could be the title. So, anyways, the holodeck scene's pretty cool. Tasha fights a simulated what would you call that warrior? A ninja? No, a ninja, right?
Yeah, a hollow ninja.
A hollow ninja, I like that.
Hollow ninja.
And she describes to Lutan and Hagon that about how the computer actually learns from you and keeps you on your toes, and it forces us to keep improving. It's very nice little thing, and it's kind of interesting. Like, just imagine, you're off duty, and like, how much more fun would exercising be if you could go into the holodeck and just kind of like the computer would start off at whatever level you're at. Like, it would know you, it would do a body scan, it would know your level of fitness. Like, there's all kinds of wonderful like telemetry that the computer can use to like create an appropriate exercise routine for you. Like Worf in future episodes, you see him like battling like crazy ass Skeletor warriors and stuff like that in the holodeck.
Yes,
and
demons. He battles demons from Klingon mythology.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And not just that, but in Deep Space Nine, they take it even further. I mean, there's the hollow suites that are in Quark's bar, and those are used, for all kinds of crazy sex things. And
yeah.
What,
Well, it's even implied that there's like that going on in the holodecks because way later we'll meet Commander Barclay, who has very interesting.
Oh, Commander Barclay! I don't even want to think about what he's doing in the hall.
Yeah, like,
Oh God, somebody go in there and wash the walls after he leaves. Commander Barkley.
Oh my goodness. Anyways, so Lutan is impressed by the holodeck, but Hagon doesn't believe. He's like, no, there's no way a holographic image can do that. And so Lutan insists that Hagon fight the Holo Ninja, and sure enough, he's defeated very quickly.
You know what? Again, Hagon's defeated. Okay, Hagon's defeated by Tasha in the first scene. He's defeated by the Holo Ninja. What have we seen of Hagon that makes you think he's a more suitable ruler than Lutan? That he can get his ass kicked? That makes him a better leader? He's better at getting his ass kicked.
Well, Galdu Scott, Hagon does show concern for Urena, whereas what makes Lutan ultimately maybe not a bad leader, but a bad choice for leader is that he goes too far. He plots to have his wife killed to acquire her lands. I mean, bottom line, this is too far.
Okay. Maybe that's too far. I agree with you. Okay, so there's one thing in the Hagan column.
I would think that if
I'm marking it down, I'm putting that in the Hagan column.
I would probably
does not plot to kill wife. So far as we've seen, we don't know how that relationship will develop.
I think Hagon's definitely more protective of Urena, and I think that that she's much safer.
Yeah, well, you know, he hasn't had to put up with her shit all these years. We'll see what happens.
Well, I don't know. Again, I think Lutan didn't have to put up with anyone's shit either. I think Lutan was left unchecked and unbridled, and that's what led to his extreme arrogance. But now he's finally checked in the biggest way possible. But again. So
he had his necklace removed.
He had his
He has been de-necklaced.
He's been de-necklaced, exactly. But anyway, so the diplomatic relations go really well. Lutan's like, all happy to give the crew. He implies that he's going to give the crew the vaccine that's needed, and they go back to the cargo bay and they're ready to beam down. And at the last minute, he grabs Tasha and kidnaps her. Dun dun dun.
Very TOS music coming in.
Yeah. We even go to break. If it was on TV, that's when it went to the commercial break, and you're like, oh. Situation normal, all fouled up is, I think, the correct. It's a snafu now. So the crew goes.
Snafu means what? Situation normal,
all fouled up.
Situation normal, all fucked up.
Or yeah, fouled or fucked.
Oh my God, I never knew that.
Yeah, that's what's.
I learned something today. All right, I'm writing that down.
Yeah. So
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
This is a classic. No, it's fine. So this is a classic snafu. Right? Like,
yeah.
Anyways, coming back to.
Well, I mean, you don't just leave a Tasha Yar lying around like that, unprotected. I feel like like Picard was kind of at fault here.
I don't agree. How could he have known?
Riker was onto it, like we said. Riker he was like kind of in defensive mode right off the bat. He saw this Lutan, the way he was looking at Tasha. I feel like if Riker was in command, I don't know. He might have made.
When Tasha steps in and makes the decision herself to show Lutan around, she now becomes a player in this diplomatic situation. Like, had she not said anything, it wouldn't have escalated. It would probably have been like, Lutan would probably have been like, well, clearly you do not trust us, or something like that, and that would have been it.
I feel like there needs to be some sort of transporter protocol. Like they should not allow people to use their own transporters. The Enterprise needs to be a little more on top of that.
Right.
And like you brought up Donald Trump, like if he was running the Enterprise, he would not let anybody through the transporters without all their paperwork in order. You know, they would have to go through a very specific transporter. If they had certain DNA, they might be like filtered out.
Well, Donald Trump's track record would show that he would actually cause the Enterprise to run out of dilithium crystals and power and go bankrupt before any of that would even happen. So the Enterprise would be without power, drifting in space, and he would abandon ship, go back to Earth, and save his ass and leave the rest to die.
So, what do you really think about Donald Trump?
I actually, really quick personal interlude. I actually don't hate the guy. I just don't think he would make a great leader, just like Lutan. I think he's great as a business person and a TV personality because he's outrageous and entertaining, and it's within his
$1 million smile.
Within his confined little fantasy land and reality distortion field that he's able to create using his wealth and his charisma, he's perfectly, he has a platform, he has a voice, he can do that all day. Is he right to represent a whole nation? No, because he doesn't represent the nation as a whole. He represents a very small segment of our nation, and I think it would be wrong to put a president on the world stage that doesn't represent all of us or many of us. More of us than not. The good of the many outweighs the good of the few, or the one called
well said. Very well said.
So that's how I feel about Donald Trump. And Lutan.
Yes.
And the character of Lutan. So okay, so now, yeah, cheers to that. So the ship goes into high alert, and immediately Captain Picard chooses to show a display of force, which I thought was pretty cool. The Enterprise, again, these first few episodes really show off the power of the Enterprise. I don't know why I have to. This is the engines right here.
That's the power.
The power of the Enterprise. Wow. These are the nacelles right here. When I do this, I'm becoming the Enterprise itself. So he decides to show a little bit of force, and he orders Riker to shoot a full spread of photon torpedoes to detonate 1,000. I think he says 1,000 meters above the surface, right?
Yes. Now, yes.
Yeah. So that must have been
controversial. This is at least for one of our audience members contacted me last night to complain about this scene.
Oh, tell me more, please.
Well, just that it doesn't look like the explosions are actually going on 1,000 meters. 1,000 meters. According to this listener, I'm not an expert on atmospheric sciences, but it seemed to the listener that the explosions were way too high, that the explosions were taking place in outer space and not actually down in the atmosphere, which is where they really would have been.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was an error on the special effects team or what, but scientifically speaking, this viewer had a problem with that scene.
I have two answers. I think one is more plausible than the other, so I'll give that one first. Given the access to special effects at the time that the show had, I think they had to make compromises like that, because to stage a scene that showed photon torpedoes exploding above a city would have been, I think, a lot more expensive than just having the explosions happen above this planetscape, right? I think it would have been more impressive if all of a sudden you're in a village and you see photon torpedoes going off 1,000 meters, which probably caused windows to shatter.
Do you think there were windows shattering?
I think the windows would shatter from the ground 1,000 meters.
Were there windows? Did they have? I didn't really see any windows.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry, but pottery would have shattered, and
pottery. There was definitely pottery. I saw a lot of that.
It would have been scary as all heck, because you're seeing this thing coming at you, and photon torpedoes make a loud screeching sound even in space. So I can only imagine what the sound is in the atmosphere of a planet. Which, by the way, first of all, that's
Yes,
the
I fired many photon torpedoes in my day.
It's like this crazy sound, right? So you're sitting there, you're watching this thing coming at you, and all of a sudden it just explodes like right above. 1,000 meters is not that high, right? It's like a good radio tower is
meters. What is 1,000 meters? Why do they use meters? Why can't they use normal?
Oh yeah, I'm thinking 1,000
feet and stuff.
Yeah, actually meters are higher than feet, so.
Yeah, I mean, when did Star Trek become a European?
Roughly like 4,000 feet in the air, which is still
4,000 feet. Okay, so less than a mile.
Yeah.
Less than a mile. But still a mile up is pretty high.
It is high, and I think it's only a mile. It's only, how far is it from the low, like sea level to?
Yeah, that's a good point, because okay, what if their little Lagunian town is like the equivalent of Denver? Then would that thing have gone off right on top of them, or?
Well, I can guarantee you the ship's computer knows better than to do that.
I don't know.
All right, let's see. What is?
I trust the ship's computer.
How high up is space from sea level? Little research break here, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, I'll talk about how I don't trust the ship's computer, because I feel like there's episodes where the ship's computer goes bad, or it gets a virus, or it turns into some AI thing. And, I mean, the ship's computer, let's say it's reliable 98% of the time. Would you agree?
I think it's reliable a lot more than that. But anyways, back to space. There is no firm boundary. This is according to the internet, guys. There is no firm boundary where space begins. However, the Kármán line at an altitude of 100 kilometers or 62 miles above sea level is conventionally used as the start of outer space in space treaties and for aerospace records keeping.
But that's Earth atmosphere.
Right. Well, yeah.
But Lagunian atmosphere? Is it possible Lagunian has a much smaller atmosphere? Or, excuse me, Ligon 2.
Right. So all that being said, there is a lot of relativeness involved in this kind of thing. So again, I think the most plausible thing is like that's the best way they could show that happening with the budget that they had. Were there better ways to show it? Yeah, maybe. But you got to forgive a show. That's what I think a lot of people forget, that suspension of disbelief is almost a mandate when you're watching a television show, especially a science fiction television show. Like there is no reason when people get caught up in like debates about minutia like this, I tend to get frustrated because I'm like, well, someone who happens to be a better imaginer, if you will, can come up with like a million reasons as to why it works just as well as someone can come up with reasons why it doesn't work. So why debate these silly things? We just know that these torpedoes went off 1,000 meters above the planet's surface.
I cannot forgive them for not doing better research, because here, being raised on Cardassia Prime, forgiveness was not something I was taught. But I will concede to you that we have different views on the matter.
I agree.
And this was something a listener brought up, and so I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I think the listener has a very good point, because and I'll just say that Star Trek is like filled with situations like this. An example, a trivia that I read about this episode said that, like, for example, in Encounter at Farpoint, the command console on the left of Picard is used to make log entries, but here he uses it to mute the transmission from the planet.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like, and it's
like, important. I mean, what is Star Trek if not minutia? Without minutia, there is no Star Trek.
There is a lot of technical detail in Star Trek, and they do put a lot of work into it, but at the end of the day, Star Trek is definitely not minutia, in my opinion. It's more It's
It's
more
more
about
than the sum of its minutia, but without minutia, it's minutia at the base. You need minutia to build a solid foundation, and then above the minutia, you build the bigger stuff.
yes. I suppose that's true. But here we okay, so let's get past this
Well,
part.
let's save that for the minutia when we do our
The
show.
minutia segment of
Yeah.
the show. So moving on, this gets Lutan's attention, but he still comes back very prideful. And the crew inform Picard that the correct the customary action to show respect and honor and satisfy the code of honor is to apologize and ask politely for Tasha's return. And it's actually quite wonderful because you see Picard's all heated up and he's told this and he's like, oh, really? This is what I have to do. And so I love that scene because he's like, Lutan, we respectfully request the return of Tasha. You know, he's just very like, he's very kind of like, what he was ready to like go down there with phaser rifles and an assault team and, you know, like use the, we would have been introduced to the Starfleet Marines a lot earlier.
Oh yeah, and there would have been a whole scene of him arguing with Riker, where Riker says, "No, sir, I have to lead the mission.
Yeah.
You have to stay
Which
here."
there actually was in this episode, but for different reasons.
Yes, yes. That I feel like that conversation goes on every episode, all of season 1, and then
we don't get to see badass Picard till Star Trek First Contact, if I'm not mistaken. Like he goes down with, like he's got his phaser rifle and his vest.
Oh, I don't know about that. I feel like there's some Picard away mission stuff. There's this one where he gets caught by my comrades, the Cardassians, in season.
Oh yeah, actually you're right. I take it back.
Yeah, Picard has lots of badass moments.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I didn't mean it that way. I wasn't thinking.
It's okay. You're forgiven.
Thank you. So, anyways, Lutan agrees, and then this is, man, like Lutan's so frustrating because it's never just simple with this guy. He's like, okay, you know, we're satisfied, Picard, but now you got to come down to the planet to get her. And you could tell, like, Picard's just so frustrated. He's just like, so there's a problem here, which is very cleverly written. They can't do anything about it. They need, and Dr. Crusher kind of hits this point home. She comes in at one point and she just kind of describes the suffering to Picard, and she's like, we really need this vaccine. People are really suffering and they're going to die.
Explain this to me. Why can't they just transport Tasha off of there and the vaccine? Why can't they just...
What they have is they have a sample of the there's a better reason why they can't do any of this, and it's called General Order 1, also
Prime
known.
Directive? Are we gonna get into Prime Directive talk now?
Well, we have to, because there is a conversation about the Prime Directive in this episode.
Awesome. Okay, I've been waiting for this. I'm super excited to have Prime Directive talk. Let's do this. All right.
So the reason was, Goldust got asked, why can't you just beam Tasha off the planet, beam the vaccine off the planet, take it, and then go cure these people?
Yeah, and beam Lutan into the sun.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I'm a fan of Lutan, but if you're Picard, why can't you just beam Lutan into the sun? I'm putting myself in Picard's shoes in this episode.
So they explain in the episode the reason they can't do any of that, even with the power of the Enterprise, because the Enterprise certainly can do all those things. It's capable of it. They can't do it because of something called the Prime Directive. And this is something that's been around in Star Trek from the inception, basically. I don't think it was introduced right away, but it was introduced in the original series for sure. And the Prime Directive basically, I think I wrote it down. So here's the official...
Oh, okay. Hold on. Hold on. All right.
Okay.
Go.
There's two things I wrote down about the Prime Directive. One is, in the fictional universe of Star Trek, the Prime Directive is the guiding principle of the United Federation of Planets. The Prime Directive used in 4 of the 5 Star Trek-based series, I did not know that, only 4, prohibits Starfleet personnel from interfering with the internal development of alien civilizations. That's like
I had a misconception of the Prime Directive. I always thought the Prime Directive was specifically about not interfering with pre-warp technology species and not being seen, and that's why they have to like put on weird. There's an episode where Riker puts on like the makeup of an alien species to blend in, so they won't know he's not of their kind. I thought that was the Prime Directive.
So the Prime Directive informs that kind of execution. Yes, absolutely. So the reason they go through these great lengths to not be noticed is so they can observe like an interesting culture or civilization and not let them realize that there are in fact other worlds out there, or if they're pre-warp especially. So for example, the Baku in Star Trek Insurrection, the Baku village, do you remember?
Are you really going to reference Star Trek Insurrection?
Well, it's a great example of observing.
Okay, sorry. But anytime you ever mention that movie, I'm just going to say,
It has great moments. I actually like that's some great moments. But anyways,
okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
They are cloaked, for example. They're observing the village cloaked. They walk around cloaked because they believe that this is a pre-warp, pre-industrial society. Like they're still, tilling the fields and like, with their hands and oxen or whatever, the equivalent of that is. And they're not like using machines to do those things. So they don't realize in that movie, they don't realize that this is a choice of the solution, that they're actually quite advanced, but it is to prevent exposure. So some would argue that the Ferengi are what can happen if an advanced civilization interferes with a less advanced civilization, giving them access to technology they're not ready for.
The Ferengi?
The Ferengi.
I'm curious. Tell me more. We have a Ferengi problem here on Terok Nor.
Oh no!
How did the ignoring of the Prime Directive create the Ferengi?
It's not. I don't think it's expressly said, but it's implied that when we first meet the Ferengi, that through encounters with more advanced civilizations, they acquired technology that they didn't fully comprehend, and while their society was accelerated, their mindset or their consciousness had not accelerated, and that's why they were like in the beginning of Star Trek. Now the Ferengi go through an evolution of character, and Quark is a whole different kind of Ferengi than when we first meet the Ferengi in Star Trek: The Next Generation. We are going to
get the same actor. It is the same actor, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But when the Ferengi are initially presented, they do seem barbaric and rather unadvanced, if you will. They're very
like everything in season one, just not fully developed.
Not fully developed, exactly. That's a great point. Anyways, another quote about General Order Number 1. I like saying it that way.
General Order Number 1
comes from Captain Picard, and it goes, the Prime Directive is not just a set of rules, it is a philosophy, and a very correct one. History has proven again and again that whenever mankind interferes with a less developed civilization, no matter how well-intentioned that interference may be, the results are invariably disastrous. That's from the man himself.
So, okay. I'd be curious to talk to a original series expert to know if there are examples of that in the original series and I'm sure there are. I'm sure Kirk fucked something up and interfered.
There are examples of the Prime Directive. I can't cite them for you, but I do remember being exposed to the Prime Directive at an early age when watching the original series. Obviously they were rerun for me on television. And all of this stems from humanist ideas. Gene Roddenberry, I don't know if you know this, was a humanist. Do you know what a humanist is?
I know that, sort of, yeah. He like a hippie. A humanist is like a hippie, right?
I guess I guess a humanist can come across as a hippie, but there are humanists. There are humanists that are like in all walks of life, but the basic tenets of humanism are that the answers lie with us. That we don't need to rely on a deity or supernatural power or anything to save humanity. It's us. Like, we have the control. We don't need to rely on nature to go out of balance. We can prevent that from happening because we have that power. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need to look beyond ourselves to cure the problems and ills of humanity. All of that is here. We're capable. And I think,
okay, well, yeah, I can understand that, but as the overseer of the Bajoran occupation, I certainly don't want that idea getting out there. So let's keep that between us. All right.
well, one day we hope to establish a diplomatic dialogue between the Cardassian Empire and the Federation. And one day, maybe in the distant future, we'll hold our hands in friendship and we'll all be part of the same humanistic ideals. So in Star Trek, you can't,
maybe season 7. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, in Star Trek, you can't call it humanism, even though humans kind of like are the central players, in the series. But in practice, you do see a lot of humans on Star Trek. But on paper, some of the founding members of the United Federation of Planets are the Vulcans. The Andorians, I think, are also founding members of the Federation. So it's quite diverse, and it's not just a human idea, but that's why it's called the United Federation of Planets. It's a universal idea, is what Star Trek.
Yeah, well, you especially see that in Enterprise, where Captain Archer in particular believes that the Vulcans are kind of running the show. That's one of the things that he's got a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And one thing that is great to see is always Scott Bakula with a chip on his shoulder. And so his chip on his shoulder is because, the Vulcans are really bossing even within the Federation, the Vulcans are calling the shots. It's really not the humans.
Right.
So that's a good point you make, that it shouldn't be called humanism if we're going to apply it to Starfleet.
Well, no, I'm just talking about Gene Roddenberry is a humanist, but I think, it's hard for us to call it anything else at this point, because right now in outside of TV land, humans are the only other species capable of communicating in the way that we do, that we have any relationships with. We're quite alone, while we have plenty of diverse life forms on our planet, humans do tend to think that we're the only ones that are intelligent enough to communicate and build and manipulate reality, if you will. But I have a different view, and Star Trek does too, because in Star Trek 4, humans were screwed until they had no idea that whales would one day be important to saving the planet. Yeah, so there's a lot of
Leonard Nimoy was a hippie, right?
I don't know. I guess I'm a hippie.
Definitely a hippie. But I don't feel like there are any hippies on the Next Generation cast.
So the Next Generation's less hippie.
Maybe Troy. Troy might be a hit. I could see Troy at a Fish concert, but none of the others.
So going back to our episode, that was a good side discussion, because I think the Prime
Directive talk.
Yeah, the Prime Directive is an important part of Star Trek. And one can apply the Prime Directive to one's own life. Non-interference is actually a wonderful philosophy if used correctly, because non-interference doesn't mean non-action. It just means you kind of weigh in a little bit and like really deeply think of something before you act, and then we'll get into this later too, but there are examples of times where the Prime Directive is not followed, where it is the outcome is not as grave as one would think, because the Prime Directive was broken.
Oh yeah, when we get to yesterday's Enterprise, we're going to have a long talk about that.
Awesome. And also, the other thing is, remember Data's pen pal? The little girl in season 2?
No.
Oh, there's this volcano planet that, it's kind of like, we're not going to talk about this episode, but basically Data has a pen pal on this planet and he violates the Prime Directive to save her. But it's not the end of the world. And
Data's awesome.
We also have to remember that while the Federation of Planets has the Prime Directive, it's conceivable that Cardassians have something similar to the Prime Directive, that Romulans have something similar to the Prime Directive. It's like just a general thing where it's like you realize over time. So here's an example. I think this might be a controversial example. I hope it's not. But if you
hold on, let me get ready.
If you were to compare the United States, Great Britain, and certain other countries like, India, China, if you would let's say China, India, Europe, the United States, those are probably across the globe the most powerful civilizations. I think of humanity as a whole civilization, but let's just
Russia too. Put Russia in there.
Sorry. See, this is why it's controversial.
Live viewers in Russia. We don't want to upset the Russian
if you
audience.
miss someone, you're screwed. Okay, so anyways, but that's conveyed in Star Trek because I think the Russian tension with the United States during the Cold War and before that is kind of like what the Klingons sprouted from. So the Klingon Empire and the Romulan Empire was supposed to be like China, So I think that like these are like, so if you look at the world with these superpowers, right? Romulans, the Federation.
Okay, the Romulans are Russia.
Yeah.
No, the Romulans are China.
China.
The Klingons are Russia.
Yeah, they're not exact.
United States.
They're not exact parallels. Like it's kind of a mix or a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
But anyways, the point is that we see this in our world today, where you'll have like a country that doesn't have nuclear power, for example, right? Where China or Russia, well-intentioned to help rebels or fighters to defeat the cruel injustices in their land, will weaponize the rebels, and then you have, in the short term, you have a victory in democracy or communism or whatever your belief system, depending on your culture is, your political culture is, wins the day. And like, in the short term, it's a great victory because it's like, oh yeah, but now you've like put weapons into the hands of people that never like learned how to use those weapons properly, Like
the Ligonians.
Right. In a way. But the Ligonians are a little different because apparently they've been uninterfered with. This is a civilization that grew on its own. But like the Ferengi.
Could you imagine Lutan with a starship with all the weapons that the Enterprise has? What kind of havoc he would wreak out there in the universe?
Well, first of all, he'd destroy any other leaders on his planet. And so this is, again, going back to like paralleling reality. This is probably a good reason as to why we don't want someone like Lutan having the keys to our nuclear arsenal. What I believe is there should be no nuclear arsenals. I think, like Superman 4, let's just launch that right into the sun. It won't even. What's that?
Superman 4. We could have a long talk about Superman 4, my friend.
But
I think we should. But yeah, another time. Yes. Yeah.
So that's an example, I think, where like a philosophy like the Prime Directive could sprout from a civilization. Like, let's say humanity makes it, we do become one world and one planet. I think we'll realize that interference is a big no-no, and that doesn't mean excluding your assistance or help, but it should be in a more thought out way. Like, it's like, okay, well, why are you fighting amongst yourself in your country? Like, what is going on here? Is there a diplomatic way to solve this problem? We're here to help you in a diplomatic way. And I do think security forces are important because obviously Starfleet is not unmilitarized. You know, we don't go around in Starfleet. It's very clear that like the military is still necessary in some regard because security is important. You can't just go out into outer space and encounter possibly hostile territories and not be able to defend yourself. But it's not. But we definitely don't in the future. We don't arm civilizations with phaser rifles to help them in the short term. We try to get them to figure their shit out.
we really just need more Counselor Troys in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Counselor Troy, she's so useful in this episode. She really gets a chance. I don't remember her being this useful this early in the series. I remember season 1 as kind of being like a bad era for Troy, but this is an episode where she kind of got to shine for a few scenes, and she made some good contributions.
Yeah, and I think it's important. If you look at the way that this starship in particular is laid out, there's a lot of like balances that kind of help to make things happen. You know, like I think the success of this team, if you will, is the diversity of it. You have Counselor Troy who gives you the emotional, more touchy-feely, you know, kind of perspective. Because at one point when they're arguing so Tasha's on the planet and they're all like, you know, trying to figure out a way out of this situation without violating the Prime Directive. And Data's wonderful in this episode because he kind of like, in one scene where Captain Picard or someone, you know, suggests, oh, why don't we just beam Tasha and the vaccine out and just go? And Data's like, is that supposed to be a joke? You know, because, oh, by the way.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, okay. So that kind of brings me back to my original question. Like, we got into the Prime Directive talk. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, though, I ever. So beaming Tasha out and beaming the vaccine, stealing the vaccine, would somehow have been a violation of the Prime Directive, or what?
Absolutely. It would have been a violation because
interfering with their civilization. You're just robbing them. First of all, they kidnapped someone from you, so they committed a crime first. And secondly, if you were to beam the vaccine back as well, okay, so you're committing a crime, but are you really affecting your civilization somehow?
When Captain Picard beams down to the planet to finalize the return of Tasha, there's an interesting scene and dialogue between him and Lutan where Lutan is basically, you know, saying, okay, great, you can have Tasha back and the vaccine, but you have to publicly declare in front of all of my, you know, people that you know, are requesting her back. Like he has to do this in a public forum to show that Lutan, in fact, is the more powerful of the two. So here's the situation. On this planet, Lutan has to show that he is always supreme, you know? And all of a sudden you have Captain Picard arrive on a starship, technology that is clearly beyond the capabilities or technology that they don't possess on this planet and this civilization. Okay. And so Lutan is faced with a difficult situation. I'll give him sympathy for the devil here for a moment. He needs to establish his dominance over the United Federation of Planet in order to continue to be viewed as a strong leader on his world.
So that's what you're saying. So in this particular instance, if they had done that, it could have maybe incited revolution of some kind against Lutan.
Right, and it would.
Of course, I would never want to see because I love Lutan.
So right, exactly. So and many on the planet who love Lutan would be very disappointed. So Lutan is posturing from the start. This is not like, I don't think his intention was to create a war with the Federation. He doesn't want that. That would be over so quickly. But he needs to show his people that that he can bring the Enterprise to his knees, and he does successfully do that because they can't do anything. They're bound. He's very clever because the Federation is bound by two things. One, they need the vaccine. they desperately need this vaccine. So he
Who's
had
dying? Do we know anybody that's dying or any cast members dying? I
no,
feel like that
Starbase 4. Remember, it's Starbase 4 is where it's a remote.
Yeah, that's kind of a shitty. They should have written into the script that someone we know is dying and is imminent. You know, that would have made it a lot more urgent.
I think that like it would have been weird to have another virus infecting the ship after the Naked Now.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point too.
You know? So I think that was probably considered and probably dropped. Who knows? You know, but but Lutan. So Lutan does this, and in that scene, he's getting into like verbal bickering with Picard, and Troy again cleverly steps in and says, "We see that honor is the most important thing to you," and he goes, yes, like he confirms that. He's like, yes, honor is in fact the, you know, number one thing we have in our civilization, and so it must be met, you know, honor must be satisfied. So then Picard goes, you know, through this whole thought process of, you know, how are we gonna, you know, go do this? Well, anyway, so matters get even worse because Picard does everything. He stands up on, you know, stage and eloquently, like, you know, basically kisses Lutan's ass. You know,
that is a great speech. He gives a great speech.
Great moment in the show. And then Lutan throws another wrench in the whole situation and says, well, that's all fine and dandy, but I actually can't part with Tasha now. I love her and I want her to be my number, you know, like I want her to be one of my wives, or my wife, right?
Yeah.
My primary wife. So now this is where it gets all, you know, even more crazy because Urena can't stand this. Like she's just like beside herself, and she challenges Tasha. And then actually an interesting point, Hagon says, no one has challenged this in, you know, this thing in 400 years. So apparently, you know, it's
I
like,
missed that. I did not realize that. This is the first time in 400 years that there's been a fight of this kind.
A fight of this kind on this planet. Yeah. So it's all very exciting for Lutan. Lutan's just beside himself.
That's I think part of Lutan's charm is that he's always so happy. He's in such a great mood. You want to be Lutan. You want to feel like you have no worries in the world, and you know every situation is just a new exciting adventure to smile about.
I completely agree, but where I think Lutan again fails as a character, as a person, is that he has no regard for others. It is
well, we'll have to agree to disagree about the importance of that.
He really doesn't have any regard for others because he thinks that I'd like to compare Lutan to some of these. No, I don't think I want to do that. That's too controversial. But
yeah, well, you know, we'll just stick with Ligonian Trump.
Ligonian Trumps, yeah. So, but Lutan's personality is very self-serving, and again, while he is a good leader, is he a great leader? No, because the people actually aren't having fun. He's having fun. I don't disagree with you there. He's having the time of his life, but his people definitely are not having the time of their lives. They're just kind of like, oh, here goes Lutan once again. Yeah. Like no one thinks of how expensive it's gonna be or how many like, you know, how many people are gonna like just to serve Lutan's happy day. You know, it's not no bueno is what I have to say about that. But but going back to
no bueno,
Lutan. But going back to the episode, so it's actually a fight to the death. This challenge, by the way. So
Tasha, a jungle gym fight to the death.
Yeah. So it's either going to be Tasha or Urena, and so now Picard's in an even tougher situation, and that's actually where the Prime Directive conversation begins, because he's like, well, what do? Do I just beam her and the vaccine out? You know, and Data's like, sir, I don't know anything about humor, but I do know that the Prime Directive is in place for a good reason. And so that kind of solidifies their, what I like is it forces them to come up with another solution. And so that's where we come up with this like wonderful way of getting a divorce, guys. So they
That was a
realized
very risky plan. Like
it was
Picard in later seasons, I don't know that he would do this.
it was a calculated risk though because they studied the culture very carefully and they found this loophole, this legal loophole, where if Urena dies and is resurrected, then she no longer is bound to Lutan and can remarry, if you will, or reassign the number one status to someone else. And Urena's really hot right now, and she's kind of like not thinking right. So you can't reason with her. So Tasha has to win. So Tasha basically has to kill her for this plan to work. And she also can't be in on it because if she is implicit, then it's a conspiracy and Lutan wins, right?
Oh, they could never get Urena in. I mean, Urena was all about keeping her man.
Right, or keeping her honor. Again, she also has a sense of honor that was very much poo-pooed upon by by this revelation that he's in love with Tasha. So yeah, she has to do her. That's the thing is like in this culture, you're compelled to satisfy your honor. Like there's nothing worse than leaving your honor on the sideline there. Whereas humans often will sacrifice honor for someone else, or not humans, but Star Trek Federation. One of the.
I'll crap on my honor every day of the week. It's like a regular thing, honor schmonor.
So Picard and the team cleverly come up with this plan to because there's they have these cool weapons and there's poison on the blades. So with the help of Dr. Crusher,
porcupine gloves.
Yeah, porcupine gloves. And so with the help of Dr. Crusher, they are able to. So, anyways, Tasha does win.
Yeah.
The battle.
She gently taps Urena's hip, her left hip, I believe.
And just to illustrate how dangerous this poison is, in one scene there's an accidental cut, like someone accidentally cuts an audience member.
Yes, and he dies.
Urena, right? Urena cuts.
Yeah, the thing flies off her hand.
That's right, and lands in his lap.
Belly. Yeah, and he's dead within like 5 seconds.
5 seconds of so it's very lethal poison. So
extremely lethal.
Yeah. So Urena dies. Lutan witnesses this, and then boom, the Enterprise uses its superior. At this point, the Prime Directive is no longer in play because the way that the society works was played out to the T. She's now dead. She's not a member of this society anymore. Very clever loophole. They beam her off the planet, and Dr. Crusher revives her. They let her. Urena comes to her senses and realizes, oh man, that was Lutan's plan all along. And so now that she's resurrected, she never actually died. She didn't go brain dead, according to our knowledge. But on the planet, they don't.
Yeah, she was barely dead. She was and I guess they offered to show Lutan the records,
right?
Which I would have asked for if I was him, because it seemed like he had a lot of line there.
Yeah, off screen, I'm sure all the things happen. All those things, like
I hope so. For Lutan's sake, I hope he reviewed those records, because I really, from viewing it, I don't know that she died. I mean, she could have been unconscious. She wasn't out that long.
Yeah, it's true. I wonder if they become a Federation planet later on. It's a very interesting thing to revisit. I wonder if there's a book or follow-up. We'll have to do some research and see if anyone wrote a story that returned to...
I highly doubt it. In fact, it's Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker himself, tried to get this episode to be removed and never re-aired.
Oh, wow.
Several cast members really, really hate this episode. They believe, it's extremely racist. And even Patrick Stewart, he said he doesn't remember hardly any of the episodes from season 1, but he remembers this one as being particularly racist and horrible. So
isn't that weird that they felt powerless to say something at the time, though? I think we definitely live in a better world today where I know that if something like this couldn't go on without maybe the internet and Twitter and everything else has kind of come to the rescue for right action, because today actors would not agree to make something so obviously flawed. But I guess it's also a like a good tell of its time. If you look at the 80s, the late 80s, you know, many people from an older generation were still running the show, so to speak. And so a lot of things that we, you know, are sensitive to now, they really weren't. And so it's like, it's interesting because politically and sociologically, it's like a gray transition period from like this really, you know, inconsiderate kind of social norm to like moving into a more considerate social norm.
Well, you know, Will Wheaton, who we're huge fans of, and I know we ask him to come on the show every episode. Will Wheaton actually semi-defended this episode. Would you like me to read you his quote?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, hold on. I'm going to go find it. Let me figure out how to do that.
So while you're tuning
Okay.
out,
yes. Here we go. All right. So Will Wheaton's quote was that, this is from 2008. He recently watched it again, and he said it was, quote, not as overtly racist as I recalled. I mean, it's certainly not as racist as Angel 1 is sexist, and if the Ligonians hadn't been arbitrarily determined to be entirely African American, it wouldn't have even been an issue.
That's what we were talking about in our discussion in a way too. So yeah, I agree with Will Wheaton. There are a lot of good themes here, but it's unfortunate that the director was short-sighted and didn't see beyond this kind of like cultural stereotype that he chose to portray.
Yeah, so, you know, I invite Will Wheaton to come on and discuss it more with us if he'd like to. He has an open invite. And also if he would like to discuss either of the sweaters that he wore in this episode. There were two fabulous sweaters. I don't know if you made a note of those. The first sweater was like gray, and it had kind of like braided knots down. And then the second one was like a brown thing with like flared shoulders.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Personally, my vote is for the brown one. That's my favorite sweater of the episode. Do you have a pick or a preference?
I like the brown one too. I think that was.
Oh, all right. Cheers to the brown sweater. I also would like, when Will comes on, I want to ask him if he got to keep his wardrobe from the show, and, you know, did he wear any of these sweaters when he was out and about on the town, hanging out with friends and things? I'd be very curious to find that out.
Yeah. I think I'm going to point you to do more research into the sweaters themselves. Like, were they purchased? Did a designer, like, were these available for purchase? Like, could you have gone to like a boutique in LA and bought these sweaters? Is that what the costume director did? Or were they actually made for the show?
Well, I mean, I know Will watches our show, so I'm sure that at some point, you know, when Will comes on, at some point in the near future, we'll ask him, and I'm sure he's probably the guy to go to. If anyone's going to know the most about, you know, his sweaters, it's going to be him.
I agree. I think Will Wheaton, one day, please answer our questions. That would be wonderful. So anyways, you know, the whole thing wraps up nicely in a bow, as many situations do in Star Trek: The Next Generation. And at the end of the episode, Honor is satisfied. Again, Urena, you know, disgusted with Lutan and his whole plot, and you know, obviously now unattracted to him. Now all of a sudden
she's done with him. At the end, she is
done. Yeah, she's done, and rightly so, because, you know, that is really unattractive. If my lover tried to kill me to acquire all my lands and I survived somehow, I would want nothing to do with him. I think she's actually generous in that she makes him her number 2. She's like, I'm going to keep you around.
Yeah.
I
That's actually wise, because, you know, I'm sure that he is going to be eager to please, and sort of, he probably feels some guilt and remorse.
I would have assigned him to like the lowest position on my household.
Oh, come on. He's still Lutan. At the end of the day, he's still Lutan. Okay?
That's the problem. That's the problem, indeed.
He's still got that $1 million smile.
Well, anyways, Lutan is second, and then Hagon is now the new first. And things are looking up for Urena here. I think at the end of the episode, and Hagon even makes a kind of statement. He's like, "You may be an advanced society, but you know nothing about honor. We are a pretty cool civilization." And he's like stroking her hair in this scene, which is kind of
Hagon takes like an unnecessary parting shot against the Enterprise crew, which is another reason I don't like him. I mean, I know we're getting to the end here, but I just want to update you. In my column here, I've been checking off, who's the better leader, Lutan or Hagon, and Lutan still has, more checks in his column to be the better. I have to be honest.
Yeah, not for me. If I were Urena, I would have made the same choice. And in fact, I thought it was funny when she offers Lutan to Tasha. Do you remember that scene?
Is that at the very end?
At the very end, when it's all being resolved, she goes, "Do you want him?"
Oh yeah, Tasha is like, "Oh, I'm not sure." Tasha actually considers it for a second, right?
No, she's like, she kind of like,
I don't think it would work out, or something like.
Kind of brushes it off. She's polite about it because you don't want to piss these people off any further.
I don't think he was just polite. There was like a moment of hesitation where
well, it is
a little bit of lust in her eyes. Like, Tasha, do we know if Tasha ever, when she was on the planet, did her and Lutan ever get the chance to, have relations or anything?
I don't think so. I think she was not, she would not have succumbed to that, being a Starfleet officer. Oh, that's an interesting point I wanted to talk about too. There's a really good scene where Captain Picard is going to kind of talk to Lutan a little bit more and to gather a little bit more about the situation.
He admits he knows nothing about women.
Well, he admits that in his position as a Starfleet captain, that he can know very little about women, right? Yeah. Like that's really what happens. Oh, and another interesting situation. This is in fact the episode where Wesley gets to sit at ops for the first time.
Oh yeah, okay.
It was a nice Wesley moment where Captain Picard lets him onto the bridge and asks him to sit at ops, and then even later on at the end of the episode, Captain Picard, tells him there'll be more opportunities, and this is all because again he shows no tenderness normally, but with Dr. Crusher.
It's because he wants to bang Dr. Crusher. That's the only reason. Like, he comes into his office and she's like, Wesley is he won't get off the turbo lift and come into the bridge.
Right.
And he goes into his office and she's like, "Captain, Wesley would really like to come on and she's kind of shaking, doing her little dance in front of him.
Wow, I didn't see the dance.
A little seduction. Listen, Captain, Dr. Crusher is a master of body language. She knows how to push Picard's buttons. She always has.
Gates, funny that you say that. Gates McFadden is a dancer and a choreographer. So, she choreographed Labyrinth, if I'm not mistaken.
Of course. I know everything about everyone. Starfleet boy. How dare you question the knowledge that called you God?
So, wait.
Of course I knew that.
I mentioned this before, but that's actually a brilliant scene, and I like the line where Dr. Crusher's getting really emotional, and you can see tears in her eyes, and she says, "Where's that callus that doctors are supposed to develop?" And Picard says, "Well, the best ones don't." And that was you could tell she's very visibly moved by that. And again, he's not very giving at this point with compliments or tenderness, and so seeing that side of him was very nice, and again, he does this for Crusher, so you can tell there's something, there's it's nice. I like those kind of relationship moments.
I also thought it was a great scene when he everybody's reaction to Picard when he lets Wesley come onto the bridge. Like, Riker is rushing over there. He's like, "I'll get rid of him, sir. Don't worry." And he's like, No, it's okay. And everybody is shocked.
Right.
Yeah. On Riker's face is like, "What?"
I think he said,
"Are you sure?
Yeah.
Sir, are you sure you don't want to be an asshole to Wesley?"
Indeed.
Make it so, number one.
So I guess the thing about this episode is that it's an episode worth watching, of course, if you're on your Star Trek journey, but worth noting that it is not an episode that was made with the best intentions. Apparently, the director did not have the best intentions and did not consider what he was doing when he was portraying the characters in such a stereotypical way and choosing to cast all black actors for it.
And I'm sorry, but yeah. I would just add to what you're saying that every episode of Star Trek is worth watching. But I'll understand also that this is considered by many people to be possibly the worst episode ever. And so, if you're starting the series from the beginning and you're 3 episodes in now and you're like, what is this shit? I don't know if I can go on. Just understand that this is as bad as it will get. And from here, it's nothing but more exciting, more fun, better writing, better sets and special effects, and just it's going to get much better. So don't let this discourage you if you're starting your next generation journey.
Yeah, and anyone who sees this discussion, if there's anything you'd like to add to it or chime in about, we'd love to hear from you. And there's like lots of ways you can do that. You could leave a comment on the YouTube. If you see this on the Facebook, you can leave a comment on the Facebook. If you see this on the Twitter, you can leave a comment on the Twitter. If you want to email us, it's starfleetboy@gmail.com. And if you have a question for Goldu Scott, I'll forward it to him. But you can pitch your...
You can also reach me. I am golduscott@gmail.
Yeah, and you might want to spell that.
I do not do Twitter. I do not do Facebook. I do not do any of that stuff. I'm far too busy overseeing the occupation. But if you email me at golduscott@gmail.com, I would be more than happy to answer your questions.
Excellent. I think you might want to spell that since...
Oh, yes. That would be GULDUSKAT. The same as Golducott on Deep Space Nine, my fictional version on TV. Just add the S.
Excellent. And a little side note about the show. The Doctor will be returning. He's currently out of range for communications. He's
somewhere else in the time space. Is he journeying his TARDIS?
He's visited a companion in the past, and unfortunately, the TARDIS cannot patch him through.
Oh, is it Romana?
It is Romana.
Oh, I hope it's Romana. Oh, I hope he takes pictures.
That is a great guess because it is Romana.
Yes. Oh, Romana. Ask him to bring her back with him.
So that wraps up all I have to say about the episode. How about you, Goldu Scott?
I've got nothing left, man.
Excellent. Well, another great discussion. I look forward to talking to you on the next one.
All right. Very good. Goldu Scott out.
Live long and prosper.
Yes. Same to you.